Hi, it's Dr. Casey, and I'm here with my colleague and friend, Nicole Ceil, and we're talking about tea time. All right, so today we are going to talk a little bit about Burdock Tea, which is a wonderful herbal tea. And then Nicole is going to share some awesome information and tips with us that you can do right at home to support your health. So Burdock Tea, if you haven't heard of it, it's a little bit of a less well-known tea, but it's a wonderful, wonderful tea, especially as a support for the liver and detoxification. Nicole, do you like Burdock tea? I should have asked you. Are you a
I
fan?
think most teas I'm open to. A little bit of organic honey always helps the medicine go down.
Mhm.
So it's a good therapeutic option. Yes.
Yeah. And I agree. I don't always add sweeteners to my tea, but I love adding a little honey to the Burdock tea because it has a really like deep, earthy, kind of richer flavor. And honey can soften that a little bit.
Mhm.
It can give it a little bit of a lift. So burdock, we primarily use the root medicinally, but you can use other parts of the plant as well. But the root has some really great properties for helping to support detoxification in your body and actually also cleansing the blood. So it helps to improve the circulation. It helps to move your blood a little bit closer to the surface of the skin, which also can help kind of some of that surface area circulation. So it can actually help skin conditions, both because it is helping your detox pathways. So it's getting some of those toxins and other junk out of your body easier, but also getting more circulation to your skin. It can move things through the skin better. So we can see it helpful sometimes with things like eczema. Um, and burdock also, it contains some fibers, especially inulin, and it has some mucilaginous properties. So it's actually very soothing to the gut. And because of the fiber content, it can actually be helpful for acting as a little bit of like an anti-diabetic. And sometimes when people are using a lot of burdock, and they have diabetes, they may need their medications adjusted a little bit. So it's important to be monitored with that. That would typically be with a higher amount of burdock. And we use burdock in teas. I love using it in a tea form, but you can also get it in a supplemental form as well. And let's see, what else did I want to tell you about burdock? Burdock can be a little bit more allergenic sometimes than other herbs, especially if you come in contact with it and you're sensitive to it. For most people, it's fine, but it can be a little bit more allergenic than some other herbs. The seeds, so usually we use the root, but the seeds also have some nice anti-inflammatory properties, and the leaves can actually have a little bit of antimicrobial properties. So if you chew on them, as long as you're not sensitive to them, if you chew on them, you can get a little bit of a nice antimicrobial effect in your mouth, which traditionally can be nice. The burdock, it has a real, as I mentioned, it's great for detox. It has a real affinity for the liver. You do want to be cautious with using burdock if you're pregnant or lactating, because we also don't want to stimulate detox while that's happening in your body. But the burdock can have a slightly estrogenic effect, which we don't want that to be playing a role in any in pregnancy or in lactation. And it also can potentially be a little bit stimulating to the uterus. So again, we don't want that to be happening during pregnancy. But burdock is in general just a really nice supportive tea. You're probably not going to notice a big change after just having a cup of it. But if you like it and you have it consistently, it could really support your detoxification pathways. And again, bringing that circulation, your blood to the surface of your skin more to help with skin health too. So yeah, burdock. And again, a little honey, like Nicole said, can really help with the taste. But I would drink it straight too. The honey just softens it a little bit. So all of that said, I'm going to take a sip of my tea real quick. Yum. So all of that said, let's talk with Nicole a little bit now. And so Nicole works as a functional nutrition practitioner. And she also she has a master's in psychology and counseling. So Nicole, what are maybe some of your go-tos for supporting some of the detox in the body? And I know we've talked about, you know, lymph being connected with that. So I'd love to hear from you what you work with people on a little bit.
Well, thanks, Kathleen. And after your description of Burdock tea, I am kind of wishing I had burdock in my cup right now. I have a tea blend. It's a herbal chai tea, so caffeine free and very stress reducing in its herbal blend. So I'm enjoying that right now, even though burdock also has some fantastic properties. So when I think about detoxification, one of the primary body systems that comes to mind for me is our lymph system. And that is very relevant at all times, but especially at this time of year when we want our immune function to be top notch. So the way our lymphatic system operates is it's a network of vessels that run through the body, almost like our cardiovascular system, yet it doesn't have a pump like the heart. So it is dependent on sort of wave-like contractions and our own physical body movement to move the fluids running through it so it can circulate. And the lymph is really responsible for transporting interstitial fluids, which are components of our blood that are getting, you know, filtered and transported and recycled, and also for moving fat that comes from our dietary sources, gets absorbed through the small intestine, and moving it into circulation. So two main components running through our lymph are our interstitial fluid and healthy dietary fat. Now, along with that, we have some really important immune functions going on in the lymph. Any of our lymph organs or nodes are producing white blood cells. They're also helping clean that interstitial fluid as it gets returned to the blood supply. And it can be one of the body's main processes for reducing pathogen load. So it's important that our lymph moves really, really smoothly throughout the body. And that's going to help enhance our immunity. So there are a couple of things I like to keep in mind when I'm thinking about keeping your lymph system healthy. The first is movement. So, you know, it's easy during the cold winter months to want to bundle up and kind of hunker down. And there's nothing better than, you know, staying inside and watching a good movie with your dog on the couch or something like that. But our lymph system relies on us doing regular exercise to move well. So I like to recommend that people get at least a little bit of daily exercise. Outside is fantastic if you can swing it during this cold time of year. And anything that has a little bit of a rhythmic element to it. So walking, jogging, even sometimes like bouncing on a small trampoline can be a good way to get some exercise that involves that rhythmic movement. And that helps the lymph circulate.
And I love that that bouncing activity can also help cellular metabolism. And it can help just kind of agitating things a little bit in the body. It can really help a lot of different processes that are happening. And especially during the pandemic too. I love that you started with this about movement, because so many of us are sedentary, and even more so during the pandemic when we're, you know, in one place more. So super, super important. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's fascinating how much incidental movement we're missing out on right now. I mean, I often think about some of the movement I would get just getting to and from an office, and now I'm working from home. And so that movement, without me even really thinking about it, left my daily routine. So I have to find ways to replace it. Wintertime is a challenge for me. I am definitely not a winter weather lover. I would rather be toasty warm all the time. So there's quite a bit of you know, good attitude going into getting myself outside daily, taking a walk. It helps to have a pet, right? You know, something that really relies on you to, you know, get some good exercise. So movement is a key component here. The next element that I think of when I think of lymph is the quality of the fat in our diet. So like I mentioned before, we ingest fat and our body digests it. And then that fat moves into the lymphatic system from the intestines. Now, we have to have healthy dietary fat, but oftentimes the fat we're eating is a little less quality than we're really aware of. So something that's kind of part and parcel of processed food is that the fats in processed food get oxidized, they get heated, and they get processed. And so when that happens, they become a little more inflammatory. That's an understatement. They become quite a bit more inflammatory in the body, and they become inflammatory to the lymph. So you think about those fats going directly into your digestive system and straight into the lymph. They can create a sluggishness there. And when our lymph doesn't move, remember, the immune components of the lymph that ride along also are not moving. So we get a little compromised immune situation going on. So I do recommend people pay really close attention to the types of healthy fats they're eating. My favorite for a lot of cooking purposes is olive oil, and I brought a bottle of olive oil with me today
I love
to
olive oil.
show your listeners. Yeah. So olive oil, especially if you get really good quality olive oil, can be used for a lot of different applications. It's great for making salad dressings and cold preparations like that, drizzling on food that's already been cooked. But it can also be used in heated cooking situations like roasting things or sauteing things, so long as you're choosing a nice high quality olive oil. And that really comes down to the amount of antioxidants present in the olive oil that can kind of deflect that oxidation process that happens when fats get heated. So good quality olive oil, preferably something organic or from a specialty store that really pays attention to the quality of the oil and keeps good track of the origin of the oil, so you know where it's from. What are some of,
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask you, what are some of your favorite cooking fats?
Oh, yeah. Well, on the olive oil. So I love olive oil. And I actually have people ask often when I recommend olive oil for whatever reason, it's a great anti-inflammatory and other properties. But I often have people say, well, I've heard that olive oil is bad and that, and actually there's a commercial for, I think it's a corn oil that I just saw the other week, where it actually compares this corn oil versus olive oil. The corn oil is heart healthier. And I don't know how they ever got that through and what research they have behind that. But I was just like, whoa, they're actually telling people this. So first it's kind of like teasing that apart, like, the quality of the olive oil, like you said, is so important. So a couple other just things when I'm looking for olive oil, because it can be pricey, but I always get it in a glass bottle. Nothing plastic. You want to avoid plastics with it. Yeah, just like Nicole. And then also a darker color. You don't want to get a light colored bottle. The light from the sun, light from your indoor lights can oxidize when it goes through the glass. It can oxidize the oil. So you want to make sure you get like a dark colored glass bottle, really. And then the best type of processing is actually first cold pressed. So not first cold processed, not cold pressed, not cold processed, first cold pressed. So first cold pressed, nothing else is being done to the oil. It's very pure. It's not being processed. There's no other stuff happening. So that's really what I tell people to look for. And that's what I look for to ensure a higher quality. Yeah.
Those are fantastic suggestions for actually being able to get into a store and zero in on what's going to be a healthy oil. And in some specialty stores, if you're in a place to make an investment in your olive oil, they will indicate how many polyphenols in parts per million are contained in the olive oil, and you can do a little sort of purchase your olive oil based on the application you have in mind. So if you happen to be a person who does a lot of high temperature cooking, looking for the highest phenol content olive oil can give you that extra fail safe in the cooking process. So you're not going to produce too much oxidized fat in that process. And then another cooking tip that can help after the fact, once you've purchased your oil, is to always start your dishes by sauteing your aromatics first, your onions, your garlic, those types of foods, because that will release some of the antioxidants of those vegetables and herbs into the oil as it heats. So it provides another layer of protection.
Mm.
Also, or adding any type of herbal component to your food broadens the range of different micronutrients and different phenols that you're getting in your food. And so variety is always key. So another great cooking tip. I'm so interested in what you said about the corn oil. I have my suspicions that they did a comparison on which one had a higher content of saturated fat, and probably found that olive oil has a higher content of saturated fat. I believe it's around 12% saturated fat. All fats have some unsaturated and some saturated fat, and a big sort of misnomer is that saturated fat isn't good for us. In fact, healthy saturated fat, well processed, organic, clean saturated fats can be excellent components of the diet. We want to avoid anything labeled trans fat, right? Because those are molecularly compromised oxidized fats.
Yeah.
So I
Excellent.
would say olive oil beats corn oil.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, excellent tips also. And yeah, if people have access to stores like that with the polyphenol content listed, that sounds like a great option. Yeah, some really good tips. I'm afraid we're going to run out of time shortly, but I love that we are talking about olive oil and heart health, cardiovascular health. Olive oil and healthy fats relate to so much in the body. So it's a really wonderful when we can pay attention and bring attention to that. Yeah. So, but let's see if we can talk about, I know you have lots of things you can share, but let's see if maybe we can talk about another one or two of your tips for people.
So if we stay on the theme of supporting our lymphatic system, there are some great at-home practices that you can take up to support good lymph flow. And one of my favorite is a practice called dry brushing. Now, you may have heard of dry brushing, and I actually brought my dry brush with me. So this is what a dry brush looks like. And dry brushing is the practice of using these soft but pretty firm bristles to brush up your skin towards your heart, and with a very gentle pressure. And it has some surface benefits, which are, it feels kind of nice. It's a very relaxing, self-supportive activity. It's good for exfoliating the skin. But what it's doing underneath is it is gently promoting the movement of lymph. Lymph flows sort of in the direction of our extremities towards the center of our body. And so we can mimic that movement with the dry brush and promote good lymphatic flow that way. One way that I like to take advantage of this is just like every evening before I take a shower, I'll do a little bit of dry brushing. And it's a nice kind of, preparing to relax, to go to sleep activity. And it does sort of make me feel good that the last thing I'm doing for the day is like supporting my immune system. And it really sets me up for a good night's sleep.
Yeah, dry brushing is wonderful. And I love, so you said this, but doing it before you bathe. So you like the term dry brushing, you're doing it when your skin is dry. And for people who may want to try it and don't have a dry brush already, you can actually just roll up like a washcloth or a towel and use that. So you kind of like roll it up so that it's firmer. And then you just do those, that motion over your body, starting just like Nicole said. So that's kind of a nice option if you don't have the brush already. And one area that also potentially could benefit is also the face. If you tend to get like some puffiness or wake up with some puffiness in your eye area, especially, that can be common. You can do a little bit of, you could do like really light dry brushing on your face. I mean, dry brushing is light already, so that might be a little redundant, but you can do that on your face. You can also get, if you've seen those rollers that are sold now for different types of stones, there's like rose quartz and different types of quartz and jade, and you can actually use those and just do a little bit of light rolling on the areas under your eyes, over your eyes, and the rest of your face. And if you get one of those, they typically come with a little instruction guide about the directions in which to use the roller for the best kind of benefit for your body. But that can help to kind of move some of the lymph in your face too. So yeah.
I think one of the things that we all can relate to is the feeling of having some sinus pressure. That's something that often shows up at this time of year. You know, we'll get a sense of pressure above our eyebrows or below our cheekbones. And your sinuses are these cavities in your skull, like the features of your skull, and they actually drain directly into your lymphatic system. So when Kathleen mentioned, you know, doing some of that dry brush or roller manipulation on the skin on your face, it is essentially draining right back into your lymphatic system, and helping clear out that immune, maybe hyperactivity in your sinuses. So if a sinus headache crops up, that can be a nice technique too for some self-relief. If you can't see your practitioner, tends to always happen on a Friday night or something like that, right?
Yeah, really good, really good. I know you had lots to share. Is there anything else that you feel like you just have to share, or we already talked about some great stuff, so yeah. No pressure.
Let's wrap up on one final note that I feel like as a nutritionist, I am almost morally obligated to talk about, which is hydration. Hydration is one of the, I think, most underappreciated health modalities, and many of us are walking around dehydrated. And so tea, in many instances, can be a really great tool for hydration, so long as you're aware of whether your tea is a diuretic or not. Some teas do produce a diuretic effect, especially if they tend to be detoxifying, right? They'll work at the level of the kidneys to help release more fluids. And so it's important to always be also consuming non-diuretic beverages. So herbal teas that aren't diuretic, plain water is fantastic. It can even be helpful to add some gentle electrolyte mix-ins, such as a little bit of like a sea salt or something like that, to help your body absorb more of that hydration cellularly. And we can bring it full circle by remembering that our lymph is really transporting fluid. And so if our body is a little devoid of fluid or dehydrated, the whole volume of the lymph is going to be compromised, going to be less, and we're going to get less of that healthy movement. So it's important to be fully hydrated, you know, to our core on a cellular level, and that will help the lymph, therefore the immune system as well.
Yeah. Excellent. Definitely hydration. It sounds so simple, but it's such a big deal for so many people that I never like to just kind of brush it off as, oh, you know, we're just talking about water, because we are mostly water, right? We're natural beings. And I love what you said about, you know, making sure you're drinking different types of teas if you're having anything that's diuretic. So like you right now having that blend of teas, that's a nice example of having a blend of teas. You could also do that if you're having a diuretic type tea. Potentially you could have it with other types of teas that aren't in a blend. The Burdock tea itself is actually a little bit of a diuretic, not a big one, but, you know, like you said, it's a detoxifier. It helps to cleanse the blood. It helps to move things. It can also have a mild laxative effect, but for most people, it doesn't. You'd have to have a lot of it. I actually haven't seen it have a laxative effect with anyone. It's just what the research shows, but it's a potential. So yeah, really, really good point. Water for the win.
And we all know that our biggest culprits for dehydration are coffee, soft drinks, you know, very high sugar content, beverages. And so if you're drinking any type of tea, chances are you're in the net positive in terms of a choice for your body. So tea over something really highly caffeinated or really sugary all the time is always a good choice.
Yeah, definitely. And that's just easing the burden on the body and allowing things to work much better throughout, really. Yeah. Nicole, thank you so much for sharing all of these wonderful tips and thoughts and your wisdom with people, your nutrition expertise. I love that we went into the oils a little bit more. That's awesome.
Thank you for inviting me. This was very fun today.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. Well, I want to say cheers to you, and I'm going to share your website below if people want to connect with you at all. Cheers.